Yeah, like I think basically if the story in this is just the business tips and facts, like things that people can put to use in their own careers, I think that's more likely to be picked up as an angle for a news story as opposed to like the actual group itself. I think as a flow-on effect from having your information used in a magazine, I think you'll be quoted, and then from there you'll get publicity in turn for your business. But I think you just have to keep remembering, why would a magazine want to run this particular, like what do they want out of it? But statistics, facts, figures are always really great, because a lot of most of the time when you are writing a story, you want to have something like that to back up what you're saying. So if you can put that forward, then
What's the best way to pitch into women's magazines in terms of that kind of story?
Okay, I think probably the best thing to do is, once again, find out who the features editor is, because they're the ones who, most of the time, like they will be the ones who will be looking after the story. So as I said, like go through, like if there's a specific mag that you want to target, go to the front of the magazine, look at the masthead, look at the features editor, and email that person, or like call them. So just approach them directly.
I thought your press release read really, really well. I like that you started off on a current issue, sort of winter going into spring. If you're pitching to mainstream media like the Herald, it's probably too much like an advert.
Okay.
We probably want something that is not so much exactly about your business and all the services that you offer, but might look at the issue of decluttering a bit wider. But I'll try with everyone to give some advice on pitching to mainstream media. And so it's obviously different to pitching to niche publications.
Yeah.
So you should be firstly trying to find the right person to pitch to, because if you pitch it to the wrong journalist, they'll just delete it straight away, and that will involve reading the newspaper, so you know the journalists that are writing in your area. And the second thing is trying to pitch it in the right context, so trying to pitch it as part of a wider trend story. For example, you might pitch to the editor of My Career for a story on how cluttered workspaces affect productivity, say.
Yeah.
That's not just about your business, but you'll obviously be interviewed for that story.
Right.
And your second point about how do you sort of position yourself as an expert that journalists go to, I think that's a matter of firstly finding the right people within the newspaper, and secondly keeping in touch with them, because you're more on top of your industry than a journalist is. So if there's any trends that you've noticed, email them. If there's any current events that you think are relevant, email them, and say
a
that,
press release or just an email?
I don't think there's any need to write a press release. If you want to include this so that they know something about what you do, then I think so. Like, there's no harm in attaching a press release.
Yeah.
But like, journalists can be quite lazy or just not necessarily know what's going on in every field. If there's some amazing trend that you have witnessed in your field,
Yeah.
and you email them with an interesting trend, they've got a story. They're gonna take interest if it's.
Just on a quick note, journalists are looking for stories.
Yeah.
They're looking for great stories.
Sure, yeah.
So all you have to do is pitch and deliver a good story.
Yeah.
So the fact is,
if it's a terrible idea, they'll ignore it. But if it's a good story, I get so many stories from just good press releases that have come to me. But the key is finding the right person and sort of putting it in the right context. Don't just send it out of the blue to the wrong person, I think. Yeah, and that really just involves knowing the media that you're pitching to.
For me, the story that you should be pitching is more around the booking and leading people into the networking event, because it's a local area one, isn't it? It's not national. It's not national news, so it's more local media coverage than anything else. But the book is potentially national coverage. Just a quick tip: is anyone in here wanting to write a book at all? Yep. When you're actually writing the subject lines for all of the content in your book, write it as if they're all press release titles. Because then when you go to media, you've got like 100 different angles out of one single book that you can keep going back to the same people with a different angle and a different idea. But it also makes them more interesting for the reader as well. But I think with the workshops, I would be pitching segment ideas to like a current affair and Today Tonight, because they will actually want to come in and film a workshop. So what you have to do is, what are the top things that you're actually going to cover with this, but also do you have some case studies of people that found one? Or is it... Yeah, so that's one of the first things. If someone found love, within 20 days of doing the workshop or something like that, that would make it more of a compelling title. So if you can use numbers in your title as well, it tends to capture the attention. But also, can you do general predictions? Yep. So it might be Living Now magazine, which is, I think it goes out to over 100,000 plus people, to actually send them, hey, here's my top predictions as a potential feature article. So don't just look at this as you want someone else to write about you. Look at it as how can you actually get a feature article in your publication as well, because you will actually get mentioned more in that. It's all about you. Because if you're just sending out a press release, you might get maybe 2 quotes and your name mentioned, but that's going to be it. So think bigger.
I think your whole story is not around the networking. It's actually focusing on maybe building media releases around what your clients, your mastermind group, their businesses, and then tie in your mastermind group to that. So that's where your stories are, because it's not in it's actually in what maybe the benefits that they've got from it, or what they do, and how they actually did that through the mastermind group.
I think what you have to try and remember is you need to put everything in layman's terms. I'm technologically challenged, so I had trouble kind of grasping exactly what it was that the service that you provided. So I think once again it comes down to the importance of tailoring your press release to each publication that you approach, because I'm sure if you approached like a computer magazine or something like that, they'd be all over this because they totally understand it, but you have to remember that not everybody has that sort of background knowledge on it, so they will have troubles figuring out how it's relevant to their magazine. I think it's really interesting that you are an expert in social media, because I think nowadays there's a lot more stories with looking at things to do with Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc. So you should try and position yourself as a bit of a social media expert. But I think it's really important to be able to summarize in one sentence probably how are you an expert on it. Can you analyze can you analyze data and come up with something like that kind of thing, because then a journalist needs to know what your expertise is and how you will be relevant to a story that they may be writing. And I think I guess just keep an eye out for tech-based stories that come up in the media. A lot of the time, if something happens on, I guess like a case comes out and they've discovered something on Facebook or things like that, then I think you should jump on that immediately, because then they will need somebody to speak to comment and things like that.
I just thought it needed to be more focused, and you just need to identify a few key messages and kind of construct a media release around that message so it is relevant to the media. Whereas I think for technology magazines it would be okay, but if you're pitching to anything else, you need a press release constructed around a key message. And also, because it was very much like a company profile than a media release. There was a lot of information, which was great, but you needed it to focus on 1 or 2 things.
You've got to make it about a story, because this is about your business.
This is my story.
It's just this is a company doing great things. That's great, but it's not a story that a publication could actually put into a magazine, for example. There are so many statistics available to you. I know there's one statistic that people are more likely to buy up to 50% more with a company if they interact with that brand through social media. That's 50% more. So as soon as a study like that comes out, that should be the heading. That should go out to everyone. But also the one thing that I noticed is you talk a lot of features, but you don't talk benefits.
That's
So
maybe because I'm a technical guy.
Yeah. So it's kind of.
I wrote that code.
So it's kind of like we've got social business intelligence, strategy, tactics, tools, and services, but that doesn't mean anything to a typical business person. It's like, okay, so what percentage could it increase my sales? How could I help increase productivity in the workplace? How could I help increase sales? Like, there's no mention of that.
It's like how the feature changes your business.
Yeah, and a feature and a benefit should always go together. So if it's social business intelligence, that's a feature. What's the benefit of social business intelligence? And there's huge benefits, massive. Also case studies, so employees being sacked. I mean, we had a Harvey Norman case. Well, I think last week an employee was sacked. Yep. But you have to really look at it. I guess one other question: what if you're a social media expert on? What are you a social media expert on?
The prize is a 6-month access to our business lounges, which helps people who are on the move, who need basically flexible workspace. So instead of working in a coffee shop, which some of you may do, and we're becoming more used to that nowadays with laptops and Wi-Fi and everything else, you can access any of our business lounges anywhere in the world. So,
I do like this. I mean, the one in Darling Park I particularly like.
Yes.
Right at the top there, beautiful view over the city.
Yeah, you wouldn't get any work done there, would you? Because you look out the window all the time, just looking at the
That's
view.
true, because you end up there's an espresso coffee machine
Yeah.
there. You whack yourself a couple of espressos, sit down on the couch. Like, I've got Wi-Fi, I'm all sorted, and then half an hour passes. It's
Yeah,
fantastic. No, it's really nice. Those cubicles, you do get work done in them. I've been in them. They're really fantastic, and they're a great place to do business. And it's a hell of a lot better doing business than in a cafe. Sit in those things, and you've got everything you need.
You do indeed, yeah. So if you, we'll give you one to the best price. I wish you all the best of luck. If you want a virtual office, if you want to test the market in a different location, so for example, if you're thinking of expanding into like Singapore or Hong Kong or
How about New York?
Perth or New York, 23 buildings in New York. You can trial the market by taking a virtual office there, so that you'll get all your calls answered in that location. Your post will be delivered there. We can forward the mail on back to your address here. So it helps companies like test and stuff. But we're offering sort of 2 months free on a virtual office agreement now as well. So.